Santa Monica, you're saying, changed a lot?
Oh, yeah. The 3rd Street Promenade used to be safe and nice and populated with stores. Now, all kinds of vacant stores and homeless people and giving out drugs to the homeless. It's just not the same place it used to be. It
Yeah.
used to be a respectable place. Now, the leadership has just gone to pot. They don't decide they don't want to lead.
Joel, you also been here quite often, right? You going back from Iowa, and what do you think changed?
I don't know. I grew up here in my early childhood. My father is from here, grew up here his whole life. And I mean, he lived across the street from Roy Rogers and Dale Evans, if you know who that was, So they were big movie stars back in the day. But not just LA, but Southern California was a different place back then. I mean, it was white suburban neighborhoods for the most part, very, very low crime, safe places, kids running around in the streets, hanging out with each other. You never had to worry where your kids were at. You didn't have to worry about them getting hooked on dope. And I think it's been a steady progression or digression, you could call it.
Rob will tell you, we just had the former mayor of LA, and we were looking at his stats. I don't know if you can comment on that, on the stats. How many homeless and how many, the crime rate, how high it was, and then...
Yeah, he brought it down. I
Yeah.
mean, it was like almost 100,000, and he brought it down by the end of his term to 50,000
Yeah.
homeless.
Criminal,
and then,
yep.
of course, the Mayor Yoga Pants came in, and now Karen Bass, and it's back up.
But this, I mean, we can't blame it only on her. We had Eric Garcetti before, and since
Mayor,
Eric Garcetti...
Mayor Yoga Pants.
Yeah. Oh, okay, you were referring to him, but... I don't know, he had a resentment like that, but...
I had my kids down here, was it last year maybe, had them driving down in the minivan. We're driving through Hollywood, and there's just naked people.
Have you been to
I
Hollywood?
mean, naked, homeless, cracked out, drug addicts, all over the place. And I had to tell my kids, just close your eyes till we get through Hollywood.
You know what I do when I drive with my kids in areas like that, in rough neighborhoods? I said, look, they didn't listen to their mommy and daddy. Look what happened.
Yeah.
So you better listen to us, or else.
Right.
And unfortunately, that's the harsh truth.
It is.
Because no parent, in my opinion, will give terrible bad advice to their child, because that's the only person maybe to themselves that they don't envy, So, but going back to you, Dave, tell us you're running for Congress.
I am.
First congressional district of Iowa.
Right.
Can you tell us, the representation, who lives there, what kind of people, what are you going to do? What's so important for you over there?
Well, it's a Republican district, just slightly. And my opponent has had a difficult time running as a Republican, so she barely squeaks by. That's what happens when you talk out of both sides of your mouth. People don't trust you. And that's, I think, the most critical thing that people are looking for in any candidate, in any district, in any country. They need to trust the leadership. But as soon as you start playing the crowds and start acting like you're just a people pleaser rather than a God pleaser, you're in trouble.
You guys, correct me if I'm wrong, that district also had a Democratic congresswoman, correct?
No, she's a Republican. She just acts like a Democrat.
No, not the current one.
Yeah, right, the current one.
Yeah. No, I'm not talking about
No.
the current one. Like two women.
For 52 years, they've had a combination of weak Republicans and Democrats.
Okay.
They had a guy named Jim Leach, who the current congresswoman says that she's just Jim Leach in a skirt. This guy's the congressman is a rhino. He's a weak, wobbly Republican. And for 30 years, he was the standard fare there, the first district. Then they've had a Democrat, and then they've had this rhino who is a fake Republican. And so it's just been 50 years of just weak leaderless representation there in the first district. So wouldn't it be wonderful? Can you imagine what it would be like to actually have a real Republican who has real Republican values representing them? But the problem is most of these people...
What are her values that are not Republican enough?
She just wherever the wind blows. That's the problem. Yeah. She has no values. And so,
what do you consider? Because I hear this a lot, but what do you consider a rhino?
Well, it's such an overused term. Well, technically, Republican in name only, but it just means a fake Republican. It means it's someone who doesn't know that a Republican is someone who believes in a republic. Most people don't know what a republic is. And so they're confused right off the bat. They don't even know what the party's all about. But a republic is just a principle-based government under God with standards and excellence that can't be compromised, as opposed to a democracy, which is just mob rule, and that's just every way the wind is blowing, and whoever has the most mob votes. So it's just tough to help these people get to the point where they can really be a real Republican.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying exactly.
So
And
small government.
yeah.
These people are not for small government.
Yeah.
Less government.
Therefore, what more social programs?
Well, it eventually gets down to that because a republic is based upon good leadership. And when you have good leadership, you don't need to have all kinds of bureaucrats enforcing whatever legislation has been foisted off on them. But because of the lack of strong leadership, you have to have all this bloated government trying to do for people what your conscience is supposed to do for you. It's just, perennial problem.
But I want to go back to you for a second, Joe. In September, you're doing something interesting. Can you tell us about that? Are you able to do that or no?
Well, September 1st, we're moving to Armenia.
Wow. Sarah, did you rubber stamp that? They're moving to Armenia? Okay, good.
It's
That's a big decision. That's why. I mean, the wife has to approve, before you guys.
she's I call her the commander in chief.
Oh,
so but anyway, it's better than the old ball and chains. We prayerfully considered it and prayed about it, and on and off we've been discussing it because there's a lot of work we're doing there. Of course, we're doing work in countries all around the world, but Armenia is our main focus, and we're very excited. I mean, we don't have the cultural shift in Armenia the same way we have in the States, so you can raise your children in a society that at least still respects God and fears the Lord, and that's conservative. They don't have all this radical LG alphabet soup kind of thing going on.
Yeah, not yet, but I hope
Let
they
me ask you a
don't.
question because you just said fears the Lord.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
That's a good question. I would say there's something innately within the Armenian people where they will not venture off into gross wickedness and abhorrent actions. They won't deviate from a moral standard, and it's because somewhere deep inside of them, they're afraid of the God that they cannot see, but that they desperately know exists.
But
Don't you suppose a lot of that has to do with their heritage with Noah and the understanding that they were rescued by that wooden boat and brought them safely and preserved them, not just as a world population, but as a people? I mean, there's something really special about the Armenian people, the way they think in their with their DNA. Don't you? That's just my opinion.
It's really interesting if you think about it, because you want to take the story of the ark, and if you want to look at it in an allegorical way, right? Mm-hmm. You could say the Armenian people, since the time of Noah, the world has been against them, right? The waves crashing about the ship every which way.
If you put it in that perspective, yeah.
But they've been preserved through it. So it's interesting because it's the first Christian nation. So there's this guy that we had the pleasure of meeting with. I met with him first, and David was part of my delegation, and his wife Peggy, and to Armenia. We just came
You guys
back
just came back, right?
A week ago.
Nice.
a week ago. And so I met with this guy who's building the tallest Jesus statue in the world. It's 258 feet, I believe. And the tallest one right now is in Rio de Janeiro. And it's 98 feet, I think. 98 feet tall. And of course, that statue is iconic. When we think of Rio de Janeiro, what do we think of? What's the first image
Jesus
that comes
statue,
to our
yeah.
mind?
The
Jesus statue,
yeah.
right? And so Armenia is getting the largest Jesus statue in the entire world. 258 feet tall. Gagik Sarukian was the financier of this Jesus statue. And I wanted a meeting with him because I had to just meet this guy. I mean, I couldn't not meet him. Turns out some of my friends know him, and we got a meeting, and we talked, and this guy's crazy. I mean, in a good way, in the best way possible. He runs all the Olympic athletes in Armenia. He has pet white tigers and white lions and Nile crocodile, and it's just crazy. It's insane. His complex is huge.
Yeah.
You know, I told you about going to Mar-a-Lago. Like,
Is that the Mar-a-Lago of Armenia?
dude, it's Mar-a-Lago on steroids. Like, I thought Mar-a-Lago was cool, but Gaggi's place, it's out of this world.
Wow. Okay.
Out of this world. I'm sorry, Mr.
Yeah.
President Trump, if you're watching, but you got to see it. It's unbelievable.
Well, he might get a chance to see it.
Well,
down the line. Is that
Well,
something you're able to say?
I'll say this. I'll say this. So, Gaggi tasked me with an incredible responsibility to lead the U.S. delegation, the official and unofficial delegations to Armenia for the grand opening of this statue.
Nice.
And I will say both the President of the United States, President Trump, and J.D. Vance are on the invitee list. So next year, when they do the grand reveal, we can expect
Very nice. Have they?
that
Do we know
at
if they
least one of
confirmed
them or both
okay.
of them will come. We'll see.
Oh,
But it's
Very nice.
everybody and their mother, even the next
that's a
pope
big
is
deal.
coming.
Yeah.
So
No way.
yeah, I mean this pope, yeah,
Pope Leo.
Pope Leo, the new pope, I should say.
Yeah. Papa Americano.
Exactly.
David, how's the homeless situation in your state?
It's not as bad as it is in California, that's for sure.
But do you have
But
that?
there are some. We deal with them a little bit more aggressively. We don't allow them just to set up camp anywhere they want. And there's help for people like that. There's a lot of them are, veterans, and there are veteran funds to keep people on wheels and housed, and so we're a state that has plenty of opportunities for work, so people don't have to live under the bridge. But we do have some. But it's here again. It's a function of leadership. What are you going to allow? What are you going to believe is right? You're going to help them or not?
Is it a lot of drugs situation like we have here that they're just hunched over, drooling? Do you have that over there?
Sure, and it's all mental illness.
Yeah.
And our state is kind of behind the curve in terms of helping people with mental illness. There just aren't enough resources to go around. But I think, yeah, but they recognize that these things are driven by mental illnesses, and if you can help, we've spent so much time dealing with the fruit and not with the root of it all.
Yeah.
And so I think our state has a little bit more cognizant of what some of these roots are, and they try and get people into places where they're loved, and which is the biggest antidote to mental illness. But it's not a perfect state. Iowa is a well-kept secret. It's a place where people are actually functioning with a high degree of fluency, good educational systems, and State Fair, and the National Fair coming up here in was it 2026? But yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more how you guys deal with the homelessness problem in Iowa?
Well,
Like you say, you don't tolerate it as much as we tolerate
no,
here.
you see it happening. You just don't allow them to take over. And
Do
that's
you like move them to housing, to mental health clinics, or
they put them in a lot of mental health facilities, get them some treatments. I think they spend too much time putting them on drugs and various psychotropics that really just mask the symptoms. But I think the churches are pretty involved. They try and deal with people that are on the streets and get them housed and what have you. And there's always people calling up looking for help that way. And there are a lot of churches that are willing to help them. But I think one of the biggest factors is that churches need to be the church. They need to actually help people and do something that is something better than just getting them singing a hymn or two.
Yeah, I think out here, like last year, I'm a Freemason, and I was the master of my lodge last year, and I decided to go to North Hollywood and feed the homeless at least once a month. So I took a bunch of my brothers with me, and I was just joking around, and I said, well, where's the vegetarian plate? And they said, it's right here. One of the homeless people won't eat meat. They'll only eat vegetarian. And I said, that's a problem. That's a problem that we're actually now catering to what their dietary formulas are now. It's like
we're trying to keep them healthy. So
But I mean, it's just like you say, we got to stop. We got to fix the problem. You can't fix the problem by continuing to cater to these insanity things of he can't eat this, so we gotta. My wife once she stopped off an on ramp because we have a ton of it out here, and the woman has hungry for food, and she just bought like 2 dozen or 3 dozen Krispy Kreme donuts for her work, and she says, "Would you like a donut?" She goes, "I can't eat that." It's like, well, I guess you're not hungry. I mean, so this is the problem we have. We don't just have homeless; we have picky homeless. Like they're not gonna eat this. They're not gonna eat
We
that.
have luxurious homeless people.
Yeah, I mean,
Excuse me, if it's not tofu and avocado toast, I'm sorry, but I'm out.
so you don't have that issue there.
No.
Well, we have entrepreneurial homeless who I think actually make a pretty good living.
That's a new one.
Yeah, they're the guys that stand out there and say, "Need help, homeless. God bless you," and they pocket $500 a day. I've been tempted to try it myself. I'd like to dress up grungy, grow a beard, and see how much I could actually make. I think they do pretty well. You stand out there for 2 hours, and if you get $10 every 10 minutes, you're looking at $60 an hour.
Dave, I have a little personal question, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah,
If you're willing to talk about
I'm willing.
Your son.
Oh yeah, who was killed?
Yes.
Yeah,
He was killed in combat, correct?
right. Well, he's blown up by a truck loaded with 6.5 tons of explosives up in Mosul, Nineveh, where Jonah preached,
Hold on. Mosul was in Afghanistan?
northern Iraq.
Iraq.
Yeah. So
This was
in 2009,
2000.
Good Friday,
Oh, wow.
2009.
How old
And
was he?
20.
Jesus.
Yeah. But there was a terrorist, a vehicle-borne IED that was trying to blow up a mess hall of about 800 soldiers. And his convoy intercepted this guy, tried to get him to stop. He wouldn't. They shot him. It activated a dead man switch. And it blew a hole in the ground 60 feet deep. And, of course, they were about 20 yards away. The concussion was just lights out for all the guys in his armored vehicle. And they all died of, the autopsy said, transected brain stems, which is instant, painless death. So he went to heaven because he had become a Christian when he was at the end of his 8th grade year. And, it was sort of a traumatic situation. He had punctured his gut doing BMX bike riding. And the ambulance hauled him into the hospital. He was lying there on this little gurney in the emergency room. And he was acting kind of nervous. And I said, "Jason, you act like you're afraid to die." He says, "Sorta." I said, "You want to pray a little prayer?" I told him some things about Jesus dying for his sins, this and that, things I told him many times. He says, "Yeah, I want to pray." So he did. Well, it turns out he didn't have to have any surgery. And he wound up afterwards asking me to cut his hair. He dyed it black and growing it long, and then he decided he wanted to get a job at this local nursery, and he did. And he decided he wanted to go out for football, and he did. And then he started lifting weights. And
So complete transformation.
yeah, so his mother, after about a month of this, says, "What in the world has happened to you, Jason? All of a sudden you're Mr. All-American." He says, "You don't want to know." She says, "I do want to know. What happened?" He says, "I prayed."
Wow.
Well, it just changed everything for him. And so when he went off to the Army, he was out here at Fort Irwin in the Mojave Desert. And he said that one night they were talking about everything from God to girls. And someone asked him, "Well, what's so great about Jesus Christ?" They went, "Well, how's he any different than anyone else?" And he says, "Dad, I didn't know what to say." I said, "What'd you do?" He said, "I just said, God, you got to help me." I said, "Okay, well, then what happened?" He says, "Well, I just told the guy," I said, "Well, listen, it's like this. All the pretend gods want you to die for them, but instead Jesus Christ died for you." I said, he said to me, "You think that's okay?" I said, "Are you kidding? One of the best things I've ever heard you pray." I got goosebumps just talking about it. But it was profound. So when he was killed, I mean, it was Good Friday.
Yeah.
So the notification officers stopped by, and I saw them coming. I thought they were recruiters. I said, "Don't they know my boys are already in the Army?" Because his older brother had gone in first. And so when they rang the doorbell, I go, "Oh, something's up here."
Yeah.
So they came in, they gave the standard spiel, on behalf of the Secretary of the Army, wanted to notify you your son was killed in combat today, and so after I composed myself, all of a sudden I heard the Lord whisper in my ear. He says, "I also lost a son on Good Friday." I go, "Oh my word, yeah, okay, all right," and
Now
so.
I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah, but that made a big difference. It just took away. I never suffered from any form of debilitating grief. You still miss him to this day horribly, but I mean, it just took away the edge because it almost put a purposefulness in my mind with his death. That there's something. It's given me a platform. May help me get elected as a congressman because people want to know that you actually have sacrificed something for your country.
The ultimate sacrifice.
So, all that to say,
Do you think the war was pointless?
well, it was a stupid war. It was. I mean, did he die defending his country? Yeah, he did to some extent. But Bush, who got us into this idiot war, he was in league with all the other world money grabbing engineers who just profit off of war.
Do you sometimes question, when people for profitability, they go to war and
Oh yeah, all the
somebody like
time.
your son
All the time, because I know
dies in combat?
that's the root of all these wars. There's you start from Korea on down to Vietnam and the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Like they're just all contrived.
Yeah.
Even the Ukraine war has just been a big part of that. There's all kinds of things that could be said about that place. But there's all these corrupt world money powers that profit extensively off of the military-industrial complex,
yeah.
and they're just love to have the wars going on and on and on. And that's what the Republican Party has been complicit with.
Dick Cheney being one of them, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Did
yeah.
you serve?
Halliburton?
Yes, 4 years.
So they just wanted to follow in their father's footsteps. Why did they want to get involved in the military?
Well, I think they saw that, number one, Dad appreciates and believes in the military in our country, but they're also kind of Rambo types. I have I was part of one of the most lethal fighting groups in the Army. I was a tuba player in the Continental Army Band. I blew them away. It strikes fear in the heart of most people who hear about this.
That's a good one.
But
Is your eldest still in service?
no, he's out.
I've heard it 100 times. I still laugh every time.
Oh, you heard that one before?
100 times.
It's
That was a funny one, yeah. I was waiting for like JSOC, Navy SEALs.
oh, and worse. Yeah.
You still play?
What's that?
You still play?
Yeah.
Jazz?
I didn't bring along, otherwise you could play some.
Nice.
No, I don't play jazz on a tuba. You play dignified symphonic pieces and patriotic pieces. It's the foundational thing.
It's the base of
Yeah.
before the base, right?
Tuba players are starved for attention and affirmation, but they don't deserve it. They're solid foundations. That's what they do.
Dave, what do you think of Trump? How would you scale him on a scale of 1 to 10?
24.
Really?
Oh yeah.
You're happy about every single thing he's been doing?
No, of course not. But he's got guts. He's got heart. He's got the heart of a lion. He's willing to just tackle things and do what's right. He's just unbelievable capacity to get things done and get through all the garbage and the crap. He's just great.
Do you think he makes sometimes excessive choices or no?
Of course, but that goes with the territory. No one's perfect, but on a whole, he just does things well. He has the biggest thing about Trump is that, particularly after the assassination, he's got a real honor and a fear and honor and appreciation for the Lord.
Yeah.
I mean, here you come within this much of losing your life, and it kind of tends to give you a certain
Did
respect.
you know the time stamp when that happened? It was like part of, can you pull that up when he was getting shot in the ear? You can confirm this, Joe. I don't know from which book it was from, that God shielded him at that moment.
In Ephesians 6?
Ephesians 6,
Yeah.
6:11 or something? Was that it?
Well,
Can you pull up Trump, Ephesians?
6:12?
6, something like that?
Yeah.
But Trump assassination says, put on the whole armor of God that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. And that shot was shot at 6:11. I mean, the time. I mean, if somebody doesn't think that there's some sort of, a miracle, then I don't know what else, I mean, that just shows the existence and the proof of, God is meddling in everybody's business.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, Brad Sherman, who's running for governor of Iowa, he prayed the Isaiah 54 verse as well. He says, there's no weapon formed against you shall prosper.
We have a congressman here, Brad Sherman.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
You know him? Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's up here from Sherman Oaks, Encino area. He's been there for a while.
He's a little bit on the left side of the fence of things for me.
Yeah,
but
he's common sense.
He's common sense for the most part, but he's a very sweet and genuine individual.
Yeah.
Who really cares, and I like him. I know Trump's had some back and forth. Which has been fun to see. But I think they've come to the table on some things for California during the fires. And
he works with everybody, even though he's a super Democrat, Brad Sherman.
He's fantastic person.
The only person that didn't get along, high profile, is Adam Schiff, with President Trump with all the Russia collusion. And
they call him Benzel neck shift. Shifty shift.
I love his impression. Does he do this at home? He's great. I love
That's their
him.
pillow talk.
Pretty close. No, there are pillows involved. Usually she's throwing them at me, trying to get me to stop.
That's a good one. Yeah. So FBI Director Kash Patel.
Yeah.
Before he got into that office, he was just rambling on going on how he's going to release everything about, of course, Kennedy, he did some of it, and then the Epstein files. And until today, Epstein files have not been released. And that sometimes questions, when you say why I was asking you, how do you rate Trump on a scale, 1 to 10, this triggers this question in my mind where there's still that elite, people in there that don't let these informations to get out. Don't you think about that sometimes?
Yeah, well, with the Epstein files, the latest theory is that they've already been shredded. The government doesn't have them. And
wow.
It's not out of the realm of possibility.
Did you guys see the high-profile accuser of Epstein? She just recently committed suicide. 41 years old. Jeffrey, what's her first name? I forgot.
It's a 2-bullet suicide.
Yeah, she shot herself twice.
That's
the theory, right?
There's something.
Yeah, here, her, Virginia Joffrey. Yeah, and she was in Australia. She apparently committed suicide.
There was something that was I was listening to a podcast.
I'm sorry, sorry to interrupt you. No, I know. I was just gonna say this is Prince Andrew's accuser. I don't know if you guys know that, but go ahead.
So it was. They say that sometimes this suicide is still it's a suicide, but it's almost like a pressurized. Like, look, if you don't take yourself out, we're gonna do something to your family.
Oh yeah.
Possibly. So they put the pressure on the victim by threatening their family, and they're like, well, you know what? I'm not gonna have my siblings or something be killed.
Yeah.
That's another thing that they were saying about this because it's.
But don't you think that's still like murder?
Of course it is.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I don't know why they have video. They said this guy like P. Diddy. They video all this stuff, and it's because there's such probably powerful people in those videos, and they just don't want it out.
Yeah.
They just don't want it out. I want it out. I want all these people to pay for what they did.
Yeah.
But
it tells us that the political elite is still in power.
Of course.
You know, if those files are not being released, that tells me that Trump or no Trump, there are still forces out there that hold back certain things for the public to be aware of.
I think whatever was happening on that island, it was a pay-to-play scenario, and I think you'd find a lot more than just politicians involved in that. You'd probably find a lot of Jewish bankers as well.
Yeah. But everybody, a lot of people from different calibers, from different walks of life, from politicians to entrepreneurs like Bill Gates, right? Bill Gates was on that flight log. I don't know if you guys remember
Yeah.
that. Right? Prince Andrew, so we have royalty, we have presidents, we have entrepreneurs, and I'm almost certain we will have some Hollywood A-listers. So.
Oh, of course. There's a
Didn't
freaks.
they name a few A-listers?
Even Dershowitz was on the list. Alan
Oh,
Dershowitz.
Alan Dershowitz, yeah. Alan Dershowitz.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's
I know him personally.
Oh, no
I know
way.
him and his wife. He's a fantastic human being.
Oh, okay.
I love him personally. I mean, I don't agree with him politically on
Yeah,
a lot
yeah.
of things.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I've met him. My wife has met him, and he's a nice, very nice man. Very easy to talk to, and we talk about God and faith. He's a Jew, and
Yeah.
But they don't differentiate though. They say because there were flight logs where people used the jet to go from one state to the other. So when they're just throwing these names out there, we don't even know if this person was on a, what jet was he on, what flight was he
He's
on.
defending Epstein, by the way, in that article.
Is
Alan
he?
Dershowitz and his role defending Jeffrey Epstein. This is in Vox. Alan Dershowitz helped sex offender Jeffrey Epstein get plea deal. Now he's tweeting about age of consent laws, which is something that is happening here in California. I don't know if you guys heard. We have this assembly bill called, or numbered AB 379, which limits or tries to limit the sexual consent age up until like 16 and 17, So before 16, it's not okay, but if you're 16 and 17, it's okay, and this is exactly what this, yeah, I see him. This is exactly what this guy's saying is okay, which I don't think is fine at all. But hopefully, that thing doesn't get passed and it doesn't get signed into law.
Is this Sodom and Gomorrah? Is this where we're going?
Yeah.
Where everything seems to be about sex. Everything seems to be about.
for sure. Just one moral layer of perversion on top of another moral layer, or immoral, as the case may be.
Yeah.
It's
But to be clear, just to ask this question, was Alan advocating for the age to be brought down to 16
I mean,
or 17?
that's what it's saying. Yeah, he's saying there should the consent age. It says he's Epstein. He's tweeting about age of consent laws.
Okay, age of consent is different than
No, I
legal
understand.
prostitution and
Well, actually, here in California, that's what they're talking about. So
It's
if you
crazy.
solicit for prostitution from the ages of 16 and 17-year-old, they're saying that's fine. I mean, as long as it's below 16, it's not.
well,
Where
that's
there's
really messed up.
exactly, and that's
When
what I'm saying.
When it comes to age of consent laws, from how I understand it, it varies from state to state. Every state has different laws.
Yeah.
I mean, I know my great-grandfather got married at 14 years old to his 13-year-old bride.
Yeah, but
in
that was-
Kentucky.
that was-
I mean, that's Kentucky.
that happened a gazillion years
Yeah,
ago,
but
and
now-
that only not happened here. It happened all over the world.
But I would say the age of consent laws are something that's always up to debate in many states, and they're constantly debating it and trying to change it. Where is it on the East Coast? They have some state, maybe it's Maine. You'll have to check it out.
That's his tweet. Can you can you pull that tweet back up? Can you zoom in, Tom, for a second? It says, I stand. That's good. So a little bit more. It says, I stand by the constitutional law that if a woman at the age of 16 can have a legal abortion, therefore she may, have sex by, I don't know, anybody, 30, 40, 50-year-old at the age of 16. That's what he's saying. But anyways, let's.
But wasn't your grandfather? He had to get the parents to okay this. He didn't just go marry.
Oh, that's right.
Young.
Great point.
Right, yeah.
Great point.
I met my wife when I was 16 years old. I wanted to marry her the day that I met her. And she was older than me by a little over 2 years, 2 years, 2 months.
Yeah.
And
How old were you?
I was 16.
Okay.
And that was just out of the question. On our first date, I was 17 years old, and I said, "Where's the courthouse?" And she said, "I don't know. It's around here somewhere." And then she finally figured out what I was alluding to. And then she said, "Well, that's never going to work. Your parents would never sign off on it." I said, "We could always run away to Mexico." But I got married at 19, and I think 16 is just too young, especially today, because not only too young for sex, too young for marriage, too young for pretty much anything. I don't even think 18-year-olds should be going to college. Because,
Did you get her dad's consent? Did you like for marriage? Did you go talk to him?
Yeah,
And,
I did.
You know,
of course.
traditionally everybody does.
I'm
Hey, I'm
traditional.
gonna. Yeah, good.
He said, "What are you doing asking me? I'm not marrying you."
I mean, you guys have daughters now, and I hope you guys would expect the same thing for your sons-in-laws to come over and say, hey, you know, I may be your potential son-in-law. I came to introduce myself, and I think that's a right way.
I think having conversations with your children as to what to expect in your future spouse, because when you get married to somebody, you're creating a business.
Oh yeah.
You're creating an enterprise with that person, and if you are smart,
It's a social venture.
That is social. I like it. It's that enterprise, that business is for life, because if you deviate from that business plan at any point, you want to get a divorce or go screw something up, you're in the hole. Half of your money is gone. So you really got to look at it and say, hey, this is something I'm committing to. I want to build this business with you, this family, this empire, this kingdom, lifelong. And being able to communicate all those things effectively with your children is important. You gotta find. For me, my kids, they do not need to settle for less. So I say this, Joe. I say this as a father of soon-to-be 6 kids. You have 6 kids as well, right? As a father of soon-to-be 6 kids, this is what I say all the time. They have to be godly.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They have to have higher character than anybody else the kids know that they could have as potential matches, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then number 3, they have to be wealthy. Why? Why do they have to be wealthy? That's so important. So people say, oh, kids, they don't need to be wealthy. Wealth isn't everything. Money is not what matters. Okay, let me tell you. If you could have your daughter marry a godly poor man or a godly rich man, which one would you choose for her?
Yeah, obviously the rich man, the godly rich man.
So why settle for less?
But there aren't too many rich, godly people out there. That's the problem.
That's a common misconception.
Yeah. Well,
that's a common misconception. My father-in-law is well-to-do, and he's one of the godliest men I've ever met in my life.
But I would want my daughter to marry the godly person, regardless if they're poor or they're rich. And if she chooses the rich man, good for her. Let her go, marry the rich man. But if she chooses the poor man, I would never ask her to marry the rich man. That's 100%.
Ultimately,
I would expect them, like you said, as a venture, as a duo, to create that wealth together and be wealthy, as one. And when you grow it together, it's sweeter, it's better, it's nicer. But when you marry into wealth, it's a little bit, unusual, especially if you don't come from a wealthy family.
I understand that. And I think, speaking practically, if we're looking at the practical level, you want those 3 things. You want the person to be in love with God, to have character like nobody else, and hopefully money like nobody else. That's what you want. And for example, if my kids grew up, I'd want them to. We know some people around the Trumps that are very, very godly, on-fire Christians. The Boulos family, Masad Boulos, Sarah Boulos, some of the most godly, prayerful people I know. Okay, and they're the in-laws. They're the father-in-law and mother-in-law to Tiffany Trump.
Oh,
but
wow.
they're the most godly people I know. And they prayed with me for 3 days. We prayed in D.C. tons. We got to spend some time together, and it was fantastic to see that such spiritual people could be related to the president in some capacity, even by marriage. That's kind of what I'm looking for. I want to introduce, Michael Boulos led Tiffany into a deep relationship with Jesus, Tiffany Trump.
Yeah.
Her husband did that. I want somebody who has money, who has means, who has character, who's super in love with Jesus to pursue my daughter, so that I know my daughter's taken care of spiritually, emotionally, because he's got character, and financially, that she's supported in every possible way.
It's just what's unfortunate, that a lot of young people deviated from God. They went far away, and they don't seem interested in coming close to get to know him, to see who he is. That's
Would you love your child less if they moved away from Bible teachings, but they're still a good person? Would you love them less?
Here's an interesting idea. Let's look at Trump for just a second. Donald Trump said to his children every single day, don't drink, don't smoke, don't do drugs, and no tattoos. I don't want to see any tattoos on you. Okay, powerful. That's leadership, that's godly leadership, even though at the time he wasn't the most godly guy.
Yeah, he wasn't.
Still instilled these value systems into his children. And let me tell you, as somebody who spent a lot of time in Israel, in the Middle East, who hangs around these people in these New York galas, the wealthy people, even if they're not spiritual, they're still moral. Isn't that weird? No. The ones that I'm talking about, they have some moral structure. I'm hanging out with CEOs, okay, of big companies. They will not touch alcohol.
I think,
and I say, why don't you touch alcohol? You have all the money in the world. It's just a social thing that you can do. And they say because it can affect your mind, it can affect your decision making, it can affect your actions, and it can lead to very terrible consequences. So they won't touch it. I find that fascinating.
one thing I know in politics, especially in Washington, in D.C., alcohol is heavily used. So, but regarding, I can tell you in any political arena, from every state capital all the way to the country's capital, politics and alcohol, they go hand in hand. So, but I got to tell you this: just because they are wealthy and they are in positions of power, I would hate to agree with you, but it doesn't mean they're moral. If those people were moral, we wouldn't be sitting here in the first place and talking about their flaws and about what the government is doing that is not to our liking. So there's a lot of flawed individuals and immoral individuals in politics, in wealth, in business. If if they don't see the true vision and the understanding of Jesus, I think it's very difficult to be more moral than if you were as a believer, because anybody who's read the Bible or understands what Jesus's message is one of them, to be a moral individual. Even though we're all flawed and we make mistakes every single day, but at least we try more and more and more daily of becoming as more moral than.
But what I'm referring to, and I hear you, Joe, entirely. But you take Donald Trump's children, for example. All of them, I love them. Don, he's a little bit hot-headed and hard to get along with, Don Jr.
Yeah.
But all of his children are very good people. Now hold on.
I love Ivanka, and she's also her family, the way she runs her family.
Yeah, and it's incredible. So, but these people, let's say, they're not all these spiritual, born again, filled with the Holy Spirit. And I'm an evangelist who's leading people to Jesus. What's my end goal? I want to see everybody be born again, to know the Lord Jesus, to walk in relationship with him. But what I'm saying simply is, if you can instill at least one thing, if you're not godly, if you're not born again, you tell your children, don't drink, don't do drugs.
Absolutely.
Why? Because these things can mess up your life and
100%.
screw up your destiny and can take you from being wealthy to being a beggar overnight.
So my dad actually told me something very similar while me and my brother were growing up. He said, same thing. He said, don't do any tattoos, because at the time when he was growing up, tattoos were mostly done by criminals. Today, now is different. Everybody has tattoos. But back then when he was growing up, the only people that had tattoos were criminals, and they had to give an explanation why they have that tattoo, because it meant something. Second, he said, don't do drugs. Drugs totally can ruin you instantly. Third, gambling. Gambling. He said, don't gamble. You may have fun, but you have to have that moral fortitude of having control in yourself. Even when you go to a casino, hey, I'm gonna pay $50, $100. That's it. Doesn't matter if you can lose $1 million. Play $50. Get that out of your system. That's it, because that's another thing that can ruin anybody, and it ruins a lot of people, unfortunately.
How's the Dave? How's the trans situation in sports and stuff like that in your state? Is it a problem, or is it just because sometimes they say, oh, there's such a small percentage, people below this stuff out of the water. Do you find in Iowa that there's a problem with men playing in women's sports?
Not much.
No.
It hasn't surfaced to a great extent. But the Iowa legislature has passed legislation protecting women in sports. But it's, hmm but Iowa, the nation. As a congressman, I'd get sent to Washington from the state of Iowa, from the first district. But once you're there, you're not just representing the first district; you're representing the whole nation because you have a national impact, international for that matter. And so you do what you can to make life just and decent and wholesome and vital for everyone. It's completely against all common sense to try and put men and women's sports. Anyone with a half a brain knows this, but the fact that people even go along with it, it shows the level of delusion that's running loose in our country.
Yeah,
And Iowa really is no different than anywhere else.
I mean, you look at celebrities today in this town, and all their kids are trans. Who just came out today, Tom? I was telling you about earlier. What's his last name? So Leif Schreiber's daughter just came out. Our son, Leif Schreiber. He's in a lot of stuff. So his child just came out.
Oh, this guy.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So this guy,
he's a
From
famous
the
actor.
Manchurian Candidate.
Yeah, wow. He's a good actor.
I mean, it's like all of these celebrities, and they're parading him around.
So hold on, is that a boy looking like a girl?
I think it's a boy that's transing into a girl. That's what it looks like to me.
So is that the son/daughter you're talking about? So it's a girl. Yeah. Oh, it's a girl that turned into a boy. Yes. Oh, so this is an old picture. Okay, got it. Wow.
So I was telling Tom today because I used to drop my kids off to school, and I lived in Brentwood, and my kids went to Kenter Canyon, and so I would have to. It was after one of the shootings, so I'd have to drop one child off at one gate and another child off at another gate, and the moms would show up with their flip flops and their sweatpants. Their hair looks like they just got out of bed. And I'd go there every day. I'd dress up whatever the way I do. So Lee started dropping his son off in the same class as my daughter. So the next day, all the moms had mini skirts, high heel shoes. They had their hair all done. And I'm like, I've been coming here all this time. And
why didn't anybody dress up for me?
When did they dress up for me? But yeah, that's how I know, like, and I just saw this, and it's like, Cher was the first, her daughter was
Cher's daughter?
Cher's daughter, yeah, was the first that they were promoting. And now it's like every celebrity is like, oh, I got to get myself one of these trans children so I can, be part of the group. I don't understand it. It makes no sense to me.
Hey, Dave, what do you think is the biggest challenge we're facing right now as a country, in your opinion?
Getting back to the idea that it's normal to talk about God.
Good.
It's we have this thing called the Pledge of Allegiance, and we have this tokenism attached to this pledge, but it ought to be taken seriously. A person ought to deliberate over this. We're saying raising our hand and putting it over our heart and say, I pledge allegiance to the flag and to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God. No way. Don't just say that flippantly. Yeah. What are we saying when we say this on God? Now, George Washington is my hero. There's a story that goes with that, but he said it's impossible to rule a nation without God and the Bible. And he's Mr. Bulletproof. He was when he was fighting the Indians before he ever became
and the British.
Yeah, but he was shot so many times. One of the Indian chiefs who was after him all the time said, "Before I die, I want to make this man whom the Great Spirit has protected him. We have shot him 17 times. He lost 2 horses underneath him. He got bullet holes through his coats, but they never got him. Well, why? Well, the angels of the Most High God were protecting him. But am I trying to make the the country a monastery? No. I'm just saying it's normal to think about God. You can't govern the nation unless you have absolutes. And the reason people come up with these baseless, insane positions, whether it's trans or any of the other perversions around, is because they just don't know that there's absolutes. They think, ever since the end of World War II, judges have been governing and making decisions based upon what they call moral neutrality. There's no such thing as moral neutrality. No one has this foggy ground in the middle without any values. Everyone has values, and it's only a question of whose values we're going to choose. And there's only one set of values, the Judeo-Christian values upon which our country was built, that are worth following and adhering to. So I'm not just talking about becoming a moral nation because we follow all the do's and the don'ts, because we understand what the Ten Commandments are. That's not a bad place to be. But it should start with saying, hey, listen, this God wants to love you and show you his heart. He wants to help you. He's not out here to judge you or turn you into a grease spot.
Yeah.
He wants to show his kindness to you. In fact, the Ten Commandments are actually 10 prophetic statements of what God wants to have for our life. It's not just, you shall not have any other gods before me. He's saying, you're not going to have any other gods before me because I'm the only God that can actually help you.
Yeah.
All the others are fake and phony and pretend. And he says, you shall not have any graven image because you'll know the real God. You'll have a personal relationship with me. And so we need to understand this heart of God. And, I'm not running for Pope. I'm running for congressman. But who better to be an advocate for these things of God than someone who's down there in the nitty-gritty, getting involved with all sorts of issues, whether it's taxes or school and education or government or business or military. Nothing like having a person involved with the tangible issues of life talking about the necessity for having God in our country. And after visiting Armenia, I am more adamant about this than ever. We just need to get a good dialogue going and encourage people to open their heart up to Jesus. And in our meetings, give people an opportunity to give them an opportunity to come to God, rather than say, people think that somehow becoming a Christian nation just becoming Mr. Goody Two-Shoes.
Yeah.
No. It's just about giving your heart to your Creator so he can produce power inside of you and you become in love with this guy.
I think, David, you hit the nail on the head. And I'd summarize it by saying this. We need God in our country. We need God in our country again. We need leadership that'll tell us and to show us it's okay to be patriotic. It's okay to love God. It's okay for Christ to be first in your life. Because let me tell you, Joe, when I study America's history, he talked about George Washington, a man of great faith, or Armenia's history, or even my European ancestry. I'm Scottish and French, and I'm inspired by my ancestors. Why am I inspired by them? Because they were powerful. Why were they powerful? Because they had a faith in Jesus which made them unafraid of death. And I've always said this, that the most powerful person in the room, and I think I've told this to you before, the most powerful person in the room is the man who is fully prepared to die, but completely determined to live. That's the most powerful man in any room, the man who is fully prepared to die, but completely determined to live. Why? Because for a Christian man, we know there's life after death. What did Paul say? It's no longer I, but Christ who lives in me. I value not my life even unto death. You cannot kill a Christian soldier. You cannot kill him. And we need to raise up a nation of people that aren't afraid of death, that are fully prepared to die, but fully determined to live. It's not our job to die. It's from that movie, it's the job of nobody. I'll say this word. It's a job for those poor bastards to die in your place. What's that movie?
Yes. Our friend
Full Metal Jacket or something like that.
No, who am I thinking of? But yeah, the World War II general,
Patton?
Patton.
Yeah,
He
there
says,
we go.
You are not supposed to be here to die for your country. It's your job to make the other poor bastard die for his country.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm gonna say this, and we're gonna end it on this note. I was listening to this great pastor, and he said the worst thing that happened to humanity was the death of Jesus Christ, and he said the best thing that happened to humanity
Yeah,
was the death of Jesus Christ.
yeah.
So, and that death that brought us the Bible, brought us Christianity, brought us morals and values and standards that we live by and go along by. I think that should be spread more, not only here in this country, but also in Armenia and the rest of the world. And I think the world will be a much, 100% better place to live in.
We know one of the things, the big takeaways from visiting Armenia is the Armenian Tree of Life cross.
Oh, the Khachkar, yeah. So
That thing says something huge because it's not just a dead Jesus on the cross. It's Jesus crucified, bringing resurrection life to everyone. It has impact on every dimension of life. The cross has such power, and it says in the Bible that we can eat of that tree of life. Even to this day, we can reap the dividends of his life and vitality in every sphere of life, whether it's in the home and family or church and government, whether it's in international relationships or finance. The Armenians really discovered something profound, and how in the world they came up with that. But that thing says something just absolutely marvelous and huge about the Armenian people and what they're believing for and what they expect and what can be transported to the entire world. That we have the beautiful promises of the prosperity and glory of the cross wherever it goes. And there is coming a day, and I'm preaching now, of course, but it says in Habakkuk, it says, the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. There's coming a day when we see the restoration of all things. This tree of life is going to have that kind of impact. It's not just for when we all die and go to heaven. There's coming a day we're going to see this happen.
I wait for that day.
I have one
Eagerly.
question, because we're talking about God and the country, but wasn't God put into the Pledge Allegiance to the flag in the 50s? It wasn't there prior to the 1950s?
Yeah, I think it was like about 1953 or 54 that they actually came up with that thing.
So do you think the country was less religious before they put it in?
No. It was just encapsulating what was already in place, what they saw had started from the very beginning, because all the founders of our country were people who had this firm faith in the Judeo-Christian God, and it was recognized as the foundation of all the blessings that we have. In fact, the preamble to every constitution of every state in the United States starts out with overt recognition of God for our protection and prosperity. And that's the law of the land. If it's in the Constitution, it's law. And so if we try and take this God out of our country, we're doing it against the law.
Not just in the preambles, but in many of the anthems throughout throughout the world, they declared that as well, that our blessings come and our favor comes from the Lord.
Yeah, Constitution, Declaration of Independence, the Federalist Papers, everything just spoke to this whole thing. And so one of the biggest lies going around is this idea of the separation of church and states. That's bogus. They never intended to have the government out of religion. They expected to have the government. They wanted religion in the government. They didn't want the government in religion.
Yeah.
And so it's not even in the Constitution where you get this phrase. But we need to get back to our roots. And our roots got started in God himself.
Now, real quick, to say something you mentioned about Armenia, what stays in my mind is when you go to Echmiadzin, where the Holy Cathedral is, that Saint Gregory the Illuminator built. There's this image when you're first coming into those gates. You'll see King Tertod with Gregor Lusavric, and both of them are grasping a sword, but the sword is also like a cross.
Yeah.
And I love that image because it just goes to show, it symbolizes and represents, for me, godly leadership. You have the spiritual and you have the governmental working hand in hand together. And I want to see that till every knee bows, every tongue confesses that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. And that's our job at the end of the day. Whether you're a congressman or an evangelist, we're Christians, and so our job is to the glory of God the Father.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for coming. I think we had a great conversation. I don't know what the wives think. I hope
They're asleep.
no, but thank you. Honestly, this was awesome. Thanks for coming.